We start. Welcome everybody to Agile in Color Share Your Story series. I am Nicole Spence-Goon and I'll be your host for today, and I'm part of the core team for Agile in Color. Also, I have here with me tonight Matt Carlson. He's also on the core team.
Hello,
Keisha
everyone.
Wright is on the core team, as well as I saw Khadidra a minute ago, but I think
Yeah,
she.
I'm here.
Oh,
Hello.
okay. I'm not seeing probably because of my view. And Khadija is here as well from the core team. So just for anybody who's not aware, the Share Your Story series, we really come together quarterly where we have this type of event to profile various Black Agilists and tech thought leaders. And our goal here is to tell stories we don't normally get to hear and to understand each person's professional journey from a Black technologist perspective. And we hope by hearing these stories, our community will be able to identify with a storyteller and visualize their own possibilities. And tonight, we are featuring Rasheedah Hasan. And part of our tradition in our series here is we want to keep the community connected. And so we normally have our prior spotlighted speaker. Um, One of our prior ones is Alicia Cyrus. Select who we should talk to next. And here we are with the opportunity to talk to Rashida to share her story. You'd be amazed how connected we are in our similar experiences as Black professionals. So just a little bit about Rashida. She is a rare blend of technical leader and organizational psychologist whose career spans enterprise technology, agile delivery, human performance. She advanced rapidly at Bank of America from AVP to SVP in under 5 years, directed global payment programs across multiple regions, and led platform delivery at Viacom and revenue generating technology programs at the New York Times. Her bachelor's in psychology, master's in sports psychology, and deep practitioner credentials, including Six Sigma Green Belt, SAFe, Scrum, Less, make her uniquely fluent in both agile frameworks and human dynamics. And today, as VP of HR Analytics and Process at New York Times, Rashida applies that rare combination of technical rigor and people science to modernize HR operations for nearly 6,000 employees, building analytics maturity, championing AI governance, and using lean and agile practices to drive organizational transformation. That's just a teaser about her. So, Rashida, please introduce yourself so we can all learn more about you and all the amazing things you do.
Uh, Thank you. And thank you all for having me. Let's see. So that was kind of the LinkedIn version, if you will. And I would say, look, I'm a creative at heart. That's what I am. When I work, I tend to bring all of that energy with me as part of why I just love learning and experimenting, just trying to see like how many tools I can actually apply to one particular space. Personally, I am a native Charlottean, so I am from the South. I consider the South home. I do love New York. I live in Brooklyn. I happen to be in North Carolina right now, just celebrating my niece's graduation from high school. So it's always fun, and hence the discombobulation moment right now.
It's all
um,
good.
but I am genuinely just happy and happiest when I am able to at least share and express whatever I've been fortunate enough to learn over the last couple of decades as a working professional, but also as a professional, as a person, as an individual. And I think some of the best experiences I honestly have been taking perhaps what I have learned over the years in corporate and applying them to completely different spaces. So, um, case in point, I had and still have some really good friends who I met. They had retired from New York, and when I met them, they were on a journey to launch a literary festival in Charlotte. I love arts and literature. This was years ago before I even moved to New York. I said, let me be a part of it. I joined their board, set up a nonprofit, and served, as the lead for that and the literary festival for 3 or 4 years consecutively before moving to New York. And it was phenomenal. And I did the exact same thing when I took time off in between experience at Bank of America as a full-time professional and just
Mhm.
dedicated my time to learning more about politics and getting engaged in that and working in campaigns and so forth. So it's been a fun ride for me. And I think the way that I like to think about it, if I'm going to work for, let's say 50 years, perhaps of my life professionally, then I want to enjoy as much of it as possible and challenge myself in as many ways as possible. So I've been able to do that. So that's me.
That's awesome. Using both sides of the brain, right? You're getting it all
Mhm.
in there. Oh, that's awesome. So let's go back and talk a little bit about where you grew up and as a kid.
Yeah, so I grew up in what is considered maybe the west side of Charlotte. I distinctly remember growing up in an area known as like Cap Hills Mine Road, which is near the McQuarrie YMCA for anyone who is close to the Charlotte area. As a kid, um, my I'm a practicing Muslim, and so there was a small private Muslim school that was based in Charlotte, right off the Beatty Road, and so my older siblings and I attended that particular school until I was in middle school. And then my parents moved us to Fort Mill. So my formative years, I was predominantly around people that looked exactly like me.
Mm.
Um, and and that was a bonus in a lot of ways. The formative education that I got in terms of Black history, etc., was completely different than some of the stories that I've heard in more mainstream, and I feel blessed to have had Black History Month every day, right?
Mm.
So it was good. I was also introduced early on to the concept of entrepreneurship and what you would also consider just doing for self. That was kind of the mentality.
Mhm.
And so I say that because the individual who we refer to as Imam Shah, he not only had launched a school, but he owned a restaurant, he owned rental houses, etc. So he was on his own little conglomerate at the time. And when he would have events, there were horses on his farm, etc. So all those things were just normal to kind of see and expect. And both of my parents actually work for themselves as well. And so small business owners. And my dad had a background in manufacturing. And so before I knew of Lean Six Sigma, I can assimilate stories of what he told me about his experience in manufacturing, and so much of it is crossover. So I feel like I was getting education before I was even working. But my childhood was fun, was absolutely normal. I happened to be someone who skipped a grade as a kid, and so in most of my classes, I was the youngest person, one of the youngest people to go to college, but I never felt out of place.
That's amazing. It sound like a lot of fun.
Yeah, a lot of fun.
Oh, that's awesome. So moving forward now, how did you get started in tech specifically? What really sparked your interest there?
I would say, and I've described this before, and every now and again I'll say, you know what, I fell into tech. That's kind of the way that I think about it. Um, I really wanted to be a writer, an artist. Like I had my heart set on going to University of Southern California. I was just reminiscing about this actually earlier today. And but that was just too far from home. I ended up at Davidson College, which I don't regret. I'm a very active alumni there. And so if you know people who want to go to Davidson College, let me know. That's my shameless plug. But but right out of Davidson, I had no idea what I wanted to do. Like I said, both of my parents worked for themselves. Um, my siblings and I were probably the first to go to a 4-year university in the family, like a formal 4-year university. Um, and so we were learning as we were going. And so the concept of internship to then, permanent job, et cetera. I did an internship in the public defender's office in Philadelphia and had fallen in love with the law and I'd taken a forensic psychology class. And I was like, oh, this is amazing. This is what I want to do. And then I sat for the LSAT and I was like, oh, maybe this isn't what I want to do. Um, I can always come back to this. So my dad happened to have one of his best friends at the time, who ironically, now I think about it, had moved down from New York. And he was a leader at one of the smaller mid-sized banks in Charlotte and asked me if I wanted to take on a contract role. He was in the technology space, and what they needed was someone to actually write about technology. So I said, sure, I will write about technology. I have no idea what I'm doing, but I'm smart. I can learn. And I did. That's exactly what happened. I joined as a contractor. It was a team of three. One was the editor, the other person was the designer. Both of them ended up going out around the same time for medical reasons, which left me alone. New college grad, and I essentially had to keep things going. So they trusted me to find a contractor who could do the design work, and then the head of the department at who you consider kind of the CIO
Mhm.
wanted a complete redesign of what was their corporate technology newsletter. So she asked me to do that. So by the time the editor and the designer were back, they were rightfully so probably pissed off at me because here I was, this kid out of college who completely redesigned their body of work. Um, and it received great reviews, so much so that the CIO actually asked me if I wanted to learn and join the team and become essentially a technologist. So that's how I became a technologist. I moved from a temporary contractor opportunity to being tested without any
Mhm.
prior knowledge that that was going to happen. Circumstances happen, you step in, you do your best. The best ended up working out, and they trained me up, and I started on technology that some of you might not even know ever existed, but it was like Lotus Notes. So it was workflow. So
Oh
if you want to
yes,
think
I
about,
know
yeah,
Lotus Notes.
yeah, if you want to think about it, it's like
I'm mature enough
workflow.
to remember Lotus Notes.
Yeah, so Lotus Notes, and that was the first time that I was also introduced to HR technology or human resources technology because we were building workflows that actually would interface with onboarding practices, yeah, for employees. So it was testing. That's what I learned first. If you can test, then you can code. So that's how it worked out.
Right. Okay, well, that is definitely talking about throwing you in the deep end.
Yeah.
Well, that's pretty amazing considering the circumstances you started in that position. So,
Yeah.
it just speaks to tenacity and your creativity. It's all your creative side coming out and doing all those things.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. Awesome. So with those, I like to say humble beginnings, how in that space and time, that gave you a great challenge then, what do you find most rewarding now in your current position?
Mm. The thing that I find most rewarding in any position, to include this particular one, is being able to help just shape people's careers and the idea of what they think is possible for their career, right? Like, I have, throughout my experience, been introduced, and I had the pleasure early in my career of having leaders who just took a risk. They saw something in me, they took a chance. I might not have known 100% of everything, um, but they knew that I would dig in, I would ask the questions and figure it out, right? And so there was a lot of room for experimentation and a lot of support if something didn't go right, right? So for me, being able to do that for other people has been the most rewarding part and continues to be the most rewarding part of my career. I could talk about, the cool systems, technologies, and the ability, to understand and figure out what needs to be passed through an API and all the technical stuff, right? But at the end of the day, it absolutely has been amazing to say, you know what, if you open an online bank account at Bank of America, I probably had a hand in that, right? At like some point, yeah, when I think about it, that's great. But I think more about the people who I didn't even know I had an impact on, who reach out to me, um, to let me know years later, right? So that's the thing, that sticks with me the most. I tell people who work with me, um, I might not have all the answers. I generally don't. You're gonna have to learn how to deal with nuance, but if you trust me and you don't even have to do that, it's completely up to you. But if you are willing to just kind of walk with me and then run with me, um, I'll get you there. Like, I will absolutely get you there. And I'm not the type of person who needs to sit in a seat forever. I believe I serve a purpose for a point in time. And when I know it's time for me to go, then I leave, and there's always something better on the other side. But if I can help someone figure out what they want to do and put them in a better place while I'm there and know that they'll be good even after I'm gone, then I feel like I've done my job.
Mm, mm. That's I totally believe in that, in what I like call sponsorship, because there's a big debate about mentorship versus sponsorship. Um, and so, really what you had happen for you is people did that. They sponsored you.
Yeah,
They used their personal capital to back
yeah,
you up and give you a shot. Because I always say, it's great to have mentors, but what you really need is a sponsor. to kind of get you.
Yeah, I love what you just said. And I know that you've been reading Simon Sinek, right? And
Hmm.
so one of the more recent just kind of podcasts that I was listening to was it, I think it was him. I want to say it was him. It was him or some other bright mind.
Hmm.
But it stood out. They were talking about, what's a mentor? And people say that they're mentors, but mentors are there whenever you need them, right? It's not just this scheduled interaction. And
Hmm.
I feel like those have been the rewarding relationships that I have had, and most of them were never actually called formal mentors of mine. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, there are variations on the theme. People talk also about like having your personal board of directors and, your team,
Yeah.
always
Mhm.
having your team. Having your team is important and identifying who those and knowing who those people are in your career as well. Um, There was another thing that you talked about there too, about knowing when to go. And I'm
Mm.
just curious a little bit to know a little bit more about how do you know when to go?
Mm. Um, Part of it is just really knowing who you are, right? And I can't speak for everyone, right?
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
when I draw a through line in every opportunity that I've left, first and foremost, I always acknowledge that it was an opportunity, right?
Mhm.
Good, bad, or indifferent. And they've all been good. Um, Not without their challenges, right? But by and large, they've been more positive than negative every opportunity that I've had, and the ones that I decide I no longer want, right?
Mhm.
Um, but the through line has been for me, am I continuing to learn at the pace and the depth that I actually want to learn, right? And sometimes the environment is just not conducive to it. It might actually believe that it's stimulating my brain, but for me, it's not, right? Not anymore. And because that is something that's super important to me, then it's time for me to go, right? The Another thing that's important to me is whether or not the person that I'm working for um, is a good fit, right, for me. And and if the answer is no, then I leave. Um, no harm, no foul. Um, the other thing is I there are two. One is a set of values that are there. Do they actually align with what um, is most important for me and how I choose to navigate through the world, right? Consistently. And if the answer is no, then I have to leave because every day, and I've been in this situation, you're frustrated and you don't exactly know why you're frustrated, but it's this internal struggle, right? That you're
Right.
having where you're convincing yourself, but you're convincing yourself based on artificial criteria, right?
Right.
And so the truest kind of sense for me, synergy and just kind of like equilibrium comes when I know that I'm in an environment that is most respecting and best aligns with the way I choose to carry and live my own life. Um, and then the last one is, and I say it's the last one because It's probably the one that just like sparked it all, and I always forget it. But the first job I ever left, I was doing well. Like I was doing well. I may have been, I don't know, 23, 24, something like
Mhm.
that. Um, but I remember having a conversation with my reporting manager at the time, and we had a great relationship. I could still call her up today if I wanted to. And I don't think she ever knows, I don't think that she's ever known the story.
Mhm.
And I doubt that she'll do this particular podcast, so she probably won't ever know the story. But um, she was describing she was describing the way in which she thought her brother was basically moving up the ladder way faster than she had ever experienced, right? And so, what that said to me, and her brother happened to work for one of the big five firms, whatever the case is, but we were roughly in the same kind of age bracket, right?
Mhm.
And what it signaled to me was no matter what, she also had me on a timetable in terms of what
Mhm.
I should be able to get at a certain point, right, in my life and my career. And I didn't have the words necessarily to describe it at the time, but that technically was like a bias that she had, right? That could influence, the direction of my particular career trajectory just because of her own
Mhm.
feelings about where someone should be at a certain age in their life or whatever. And I remember coming out of that particular conversation thinking, yeah, this isn't going to work for me.
Yeah.
And I left. Like I actually resigned. I submitted, my resignation, told her that I was leaving. I didn't even have a job lined up. I didn't. Um, but I had been working on a volunteer opportunity with the same company. And the volunteer company, here comes the creative side again. It was actually an arts and science campaign. So we were trying to get people within the company to give to the arts and science campaign. And I was working with the head of the division at that particular time and one of my manager's peers. So I left and I got an email or a phone call. I don't remember exactly what it was, but nevertheless, um, the head of the division actually had her peer, my manager's peer, reach out to me and said, "Come back. You can come back as a contractor. We want you to work on this. You can set your own hours. You can set your own pay rate." Here I
Mhm.
am, like 23, 24. I had no idea that this was even possible. Like
Right.
it just kind of like blew my
What?
mind. And so I was like, okay, well, let me test the waters here. I was working before it was even a thing, like after hours, because I'm not a morning person. So
Mhm.
I would basically go in once everyone else was practically finishing up their work day, work on this particular campaign effort. And I set my own rate. And so my let's just put it this way. If I had worked for a whole year at that particular rate, it was like double my salary. So that set the bar for me
Mhm.
understanding my value and my worth. Yeah, early on.
Yeah, that's amazing. And that is an amazing story. I mean, at 24 that you're like, oh, okay, there's something here. Um, so, like along this line, thinking about you being a young professional at that time, what would you say, um, what kind of advice would you give, the up and coming Black tech professionals?
Yeah, I still tell myself this, right? It's just something that I consistently live by. And even people who work for me, and when I'm talking to, college students or high school students or whatever, you got to put the work in, right? Like the only reason why I had at the time and continue to have um, a sense of confidence that comes from um, it's not ego. It literally is like I do the work, right? Like
Mhm.
I I can move circles around you because I put the time in, right? And
Right.
so I think when you do that, then you're able to just draw upon so many different experiences and patterns and so forth. But you'll only put the work in if you really enjoy what you're doing too. And sometimes, though, once you start putting the work in, you'll actually enjoy what you're doing more because you want to know more about it. And how much more can I draw, from this small nugget? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Heard it. Do the work.
Yeah. And I know it also just, I don't know, it it might sound cliche, but when I say do the work, I was having a conversation with someone and they happened to tell me, they were like, I know that you said this, but then I just heard it from someone else, right? And I'm like, yeah, well, I said it, but you didn't trust me, but you heard it from someone else. But it's okay. Like, it's okay. And it was essentially like, do the work. Like, you're thinking that if you do the work between 9 to 5 or 10 to 6, that is the work, but the work actually comes after or before those hours. It's like Kobe, rest his soul, right? There's the game, but then there were all the hours that were in the gym
Hmm.
before the game or before the practice and after the
Hmm.
practices, right? Um, that people would never necessarily know about. And they're not supposed to know about it because you don't walk around telling people, yeah, I was up on Saturday evening.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Right. You're like, oh, okay. They, but yeah, that is true. I mean, and it makes quite the difference if it's something that you enjoy or have some passion for, because then it's not like work.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
All right. Well, I'm going to mix things up now. Let's say, right now, we talked about your background with AI governance. AI is everywhere doing all the things.
Yeah.
Um, what do you see as the biggest risk or biggest reward for Black tech professionals in this age of AI?
That's a tough question, right? Like, it's tough on a couple of different fronts. I was sharing the stage recently with um, two individuals who are way more learned, right, in the AI space than I am. I was still consider myself like a novice, right, who happened to see like there needs to be some more structure and how can I help
Mhm.
with that structure? And then by helping with that structure, how can I help it advance whatever, right, in a good way? And On the panel, we were having this wonderful discussion that kind of turned into a, a very collegial debate, which I want to continue on. But the the underlying premise is there's the reality that AI is not going anywhere, right? Like that is a thing, at least for now. That is a constant that everyone is having to live with. There's also the reality that with each technological boom that's happened, there are certain communities that um, are left out, right? And in the major ways, right? When you think about it. And the African American community, the Black community is one of those communities, right? So it's it's not hyperbole that there's a very, very small portion of executives and tech executives, right, who are identify as Black. Um, what that means, and part of what that means, even in the space of AI, is who's leading the charge to make sure that there is what would even be considered um, adequate representation for building out things, right? Technologies that um, have us in mind, right? And have ample representation of what would be considered, an inclusive experience, right? And so the the opportunity in and of itself, and I've seen, I haven't read it deeply, but I've begun reading more and more research, right? And when I say research, I like to review peer
Mhm.
reviewed research, not just like articles, so to speak. Um, so on the necessary intersection of what would be considered public funds, government funds, institutions, right? And when I say institutions, I mean like universities and scholarly places, as well as corporations, right? Actually coming together to make sure that they are answering some of the larger kind of philosophical questions in terms of AI may be considered a necessity. It may be considered a necessity, but where is and what is the importance, right, of the relationship of having a the breadth and depth of leaders and thought leaders, right, who are helping to shape the advancement of it, considering it is going to be woven into, or the desire, I should say, is to have it woven into as many pieces of the fabric of our daily lives as possible, right? Um, there's no getting around it. Um, and so it is a tough question because we are in a tough climate
Mhm.
where the the energy and the expression and the bold expression of what diversity um, looks like and feels like has been challenged and continues to be challenged. And so the advancement and the inclusion incentives, right? And there are some places and spaces where incentives um, are carrots for people to consider. inclusion. And so I'm hopeful, but I'm also a pragmatist, right? And so I think part of the opportunity lies in Black technologists, not necessarily, and I'm not saying that they are doing this now,
Hmm.
um, but not waiting for an organization to say that we have a space for you to express and build something that is meaningful, impactful, right? But to figure out how to work both within the system and around it to surpass and reshape what the expectations are of what's possible.
Hmm. So go and grab it.
Yeah, like don't wait for permission. Like it's, yeah, just don't.
Just do it anyway. Ask for forgiveness later. It
If
needs
you
it.
even ask for forgiveness, like it's like if you're doing if you're doing it, you're doing it from a very disciplined place. You yourself are making sure that you're bringing in as many diverse perspectives as possible. You're doing your bias checking, et cetera, to the best of your ability. And it's a force for good, then I don't know that there needs to be an apology.
Mhm. That's true. Very, very true. Um, is there other, I would say, persistent barriers for entry into this space? Not maybe not just in AI, but in technology altogether for aspiring Black tech professionals. Do you see some barriers there?
I have given a lot of thought just to that particular question. It has come up in different spaces at different times. I do think that there are barriers. Most of the barriers come in, and I want to be careful. So maybe I won't say most of the barriers, right? But what I will say is everyone everyone walks with own um, their own set of needs and their own sets of views of what they need on their teams, etc. Right? That's just human nature.
Right.
Um, there will only be so many spots in any company. Like there just will be. Um, the competitive landscape is highly competitive right now, and I think it requires almost like it's looking at it a little bit differently, right?
Yeah.
So if if I were to say to go into a situation and say these are these are the barriers, right? Like these are
Mhm.
absolutely the barriers versus saying I understand these might be the barriers.
Right.
However, I fundamentally believe that because I've done everything that I particularly can do, that I'm the best candidate, right?
Mm-hmm.
for this said opportunity. Number one, I still might not get it, right? And so, but it's always having what is plan B, plan C, plan D, plan E. And it might not even look like my plan B or plan C. I'll give you an example. Um, and this is where I get a lot of joy if people do at least experiment, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
just
Right.
experiment. If you spent your career as perhaps a developer and it feels like you keep running up against barriers in technology, getting developer roles. Some of the core skills, right, that a developer has is logic, is reasoning, is
Mm-hmm.
testing, is analysis, right? And so what happens if the focus shifts and there is the work that's done outside? So, right, remember like doing the work, which might not happen necessarily on the job,
Mm-hmm.
but then the developer prepares themselves to go after a role that's an analyst, right? Like an analyst
Mm-hmm.
role, right?
Right.
And so you're reframing what specifically is the opportunity, right? So you're never boxing yourself in to one
Mm-hmm.
particular role or even like an archetype. What you're mapping yourself in or to are what are what specifically can I do? What is my specific skill set? And what are
Mm-hmm.
those things and those what are those things that I know that bring me joy that I want to do consistently every day, at least for the next 3 to 5 years, right? And then
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to develop myself in that way. So in my tech career, I have played every role from tester to process analyst to program manager to tech delivery manager to service delivery manager, right?
Mm-hmm.
Foundationally, fundamentally, project management somewhere has been like the underpinning to everything. So when I want or need a break, I could care less about a title. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go grab myself a project management role and
Mm-hmm.
move. So it just depends on how you're willing to flex what those
Mm-hmm.
barriers actually look like. Does that make sense?
Yes. So it's changing your perspective on what's blocking you, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And hear me clearly, that does not mean that there are not systemic, right,
Right.
barriers that are
Yes.
there. But when people talk about resilience and things, I'm looking at it more like what is the strategic move to work through all of that, right? And how many times can I shape shift myself, right?
Mm,
And still enjoy everything that I'm doing. Yeah.
yeah. Gotcha. All right. I have a question here from Athena. What advice do you have for someone who knows it's time to walk away, but has not been successful in securing the next opportunity?
Ooh, yeah. Look at contracting roles. Look at contracting roles. And when you're looking at contracting roles, do not get tied to looking for something that is exactly comparable to whatever it is that you have right now. Even when it comes to um, the salary expectations, right? Like in your heart of hearts, if you know that it's time to move, then you make a plan and you might not have all the steps completely identified, right? Um, but you know, you know specifically what you need to not just live off of, but to live comfortably off of. You know, um, generally speaking, how long you would be willing to do something, right, that is not necessarily on your dream path, but it will give you kind of that mental, physical, kind of spiritual space that's needed to just detox, right, from whatever experience that you have been going through.
Hmm.
You keep all that to yourself. You know, you might have a few trusted people that you share it with. I encourage you not to share with people that you work with. Um, and then you move, right? And you move deliberately and you do not talk yourself out of it.
Yeah. Just you're just trying to give yourself a little room to exhale.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And it pays itself back in dividends. Every time I've left something, you go back and you get more.
Hmm. Well, I think if you give yourself that time to exhale, then you're kind of re reinvigorating yourself so you have
Hmm.
more to give.
That's right.
Because,
That's right.
the job that's killing you slowly is like you've got nothing. They got nothing.
Yeah, that's exactly right. You're starting from a place of depletion or near depletion. Yeah,
Hmm. Hmm.
yeah, that's right.
All right.
Does that help?
Athena.
Yes.
Okay, okay.
Mm.
Thank you.
Yeah. But that
You're
is
welcome.
a great perspective, if you feel, because I know people can feel stuck where it's just
Mhm.
like, I don't want to be here, but I don't have the next thing. But and I am all for I'll testify to contract work. I've done lots in my in my career, and it's worked for me because I also have sometimes a short attention span, and so it just gives you that room to just like, oh, I just want to do this for this X amount of time before, moving to the next thing, whatever that next thing happens to be. So all good, all good. We're running out of time, and I haven't had a chance to ask half of the things I'd like to ask. But I will just get like one or two more things, and if there are other people have other questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. Try to squeeze them in there. Um, but I'll just kind of go more, not theoretical, but thinking bigger. Um, when I always like to ask, what has been the best career advice you've ever received?
Ever received?
Well, it could be in the top 10. I don't know.
Um, that's a tough one. I'll tell you the experience that I
Mhm.
go back to because it was a good lesson. It wasn't directly like do this in terms of
Right.
have
More
have
experiential.
your board, right, your
Yeah,
have your
yeah, yeah.
brand. It wasn't anything like that. It was early in my career with a manager who had become a really good friend of mine, and she actually passed away. Um, but when she was developing me, um, she was either EVP or SVP. I don't remember it. But she was basically the head of the division, and I worked directly for her.
Mhm.
And as it happens, all these stories end up being connected once I start talking about them out
Mhm.
loud. She actually was the peer, if you remember me saying, the Arts and Science Council
Mhm.
work that I was doing that was volunteer. I ended up working for my one of my early boss's peers. And so it was this person that I was working for. And what I didn't understand at the time was every room that you go into, you're not going to be invited into that room to speak, right? Like sometimes you're there to observe and actually just learn. And you can't let your youthful ego get in the way, right? When you hear things. So she was supposed to be on a call with a lot of her peers. It was a very senior call, and she shared the conference information with me, right? And I don't even know if she was supposed to do this, but she did. And what she told me was, um, don't say anything. Like just, just dial in, just listen, right? Don't say
Mhm.
anything. And here I was, I don't know, I probably wasn't even 30. And I'm like, but I'm smart, right? I got things to share.
That's
And
something
so
to say.
yeah, in my head, that's what I'm thinking that, she's just suppressing me. Um, and then what I came to understand, several months later was she was actually just trying to expose me to how executives communicate with each other, right? There's sometimes a different pace, a different language, etc., right? And so she was just giving me the opportunity to really kind of see without the pressure of
Right.
having to perform or to prep or anything. And it's something that I've done for people who, have worked for me since. Yeah.
Mm.
So the lesson or the advice really is you might be smart, but everybody doesn't need to know that every time you walk into a room. Like it is just fine to be
Mm.
quiet. Yeah. To be
Mhm.
quiet and observe. Yeah.
Yeah. There's there's knowledge in listening.
Mhm.
Mm.
Yeah.
Great. Well, we're hitting our time here, which I'm sad because I'm like, oh, I totally want to talk about some more things. But I'll wrap it up here with asking you if there's
Mm.
anything that we didn't cover that you want, everyone to know about you or about your experiences.
The one thing that I would say is whatever I have to share that could be of benefit to someone else, I'm absolutely willing to share that, right?
Hmm.
Knowledge isn't meant to be hoarded. So if you connect with me or, even Athena, if you have questions as you're going through, your exploration of how do I make this leap? Do I really make this leap or not? I'm happy
I
to
already
chat.
sent you a LinkedIn request, so don't
There
worry.
you
Okay.
go. As Matt has put your LinkedIn
I already
information
slid into the
in the
DM,
chat.
so
So there
you
you
can
go.
respond to that and we can follow up after this.
She's on
Yeah, like
it.
anything that I can possibly, anything that I can possibly do if you're, I am I am willing to do that. So don't ever be shy or hesitate. Um, yeah, I'm here to help anyone I can possibly can.
Awesome. Well, with that, we will wrap. Thank you so much, Rasheedah. This has been awesome. Too short, but it was an awesome, awesome, awesome time talking to you, listening, hearing your story and experiences and what you had to share with us and how we can benefit as well. So thank you so much for sharing your story with us.
Thank you, Nicole, for having me, and thank you, Alicia.
Yes, thank you, Alicia, for connecting us. And of course, as with Alicia, I will give you the homework assignment, which is you can take away and we can discuss later, but you have now the baton to help
Okay.
us identify the next person to share your story. And we it doesn't always happen, but we try to alternate between men and women. So if there is a man you'd have in mind, please share, you can share it with me and we'll work on coordinating that for the next year.
All right. Sounds good.
All right. All
Okay.
right. Well, thank you again, Rasheedah. Thank you everyone for attending tonight and asking great questions. Thank you, Athena. Until the next time, have a good evening, everybody.
You too. Bye.
See you. Bye.